You're listening to the Good Old Boys Fantasy Football Podcast. Now here's your hosts, Kevin, Derek, and Alex.
All right, welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the Good Old Boys Fantasy Football Podcast. I am Derek, and joined as always by your co-host, Kevin. Alex is not going to make it with us tonight. He had that old job come up, but Kevin, how we doing?
Doing well, man. So a very productive week 9, I would say. I was very happy with the results this week. Even through some of the weird games, a couple boring games, but there were a couple really exciting ones too. So overall, good week 9. And basically we have 3 to 4 weeks left, right? I mean, that is your run right now to get into the playoffs. You have 3 to 4 weeks left to make your final push. So it is go time.
Absolutely. And it should be a good little run here. We're going to help everybody get where they need to go and make that march toward them cash and them trophies. So it should be a good one. We finally got through, week 9 was another one of those weeks with some trickier buys with a lot of very relevant fantasy players on buy this week. So we're kind of through some of the harder, some of the harder buy weeks here that we're going to have to navigate through. Couple of ones still out there that might be a little tricky here, but week 7, week 9, we're going to be some of the harder ones to navigate here, but we've made it through it.
Yeah, I think the Eagles is this week. So, Swift, AJ Brown, Jalen Hurts, Devonta Smith. I mean, you're missing those guys this week, but I don't feel like I'm missing anybody else of note. Like
the Rams are on bye, but they've kind of had some issues.
The Rams without Stafford, we kind of saw what that looked like against Green Bay. So I think it gives everybody a chance to get healthy, right? Whether Stafford has another week to rest his thumb, whether it's Carson Wentz who takes over for the rest of the season. You're another week closer to Kyron Williams coming back.
Dolphins are also on bye.
Who?
Dolphins.
Oh, that's right. I think okay. So yes. So this week's a big week then. I completely missed the Dolphins. So yeah. So you are missing some heavy hitters here, especially, four wide receivers, really 6 wide receivers in the top 15 basically on any given week. So that does take a dent out of things. Obviously a couple running backs in Swift and Mostert. Williams is already on IR, and then some quarterback play with Hurts and Tua. So we got some options here. Not the greatest bye week as you're getting ready to push it down, but hopefully you've built yourself up a little cushion and you have a nice alternative sitting there on your bench already. You're not having to play into the waiver wire.
Yeah, I kind of like this deal because it limits my my ability to choose my wide receivers wrong in the home league. So that's always helpful there. So I do like that. And then I think also I've got a matchup coming up here where I would have to be going up against the AJ Brown, that kind of stuff in the home league. So not gonna sweat that one there. Or no, it was I would have had to have gone up against the Raheem Mostert Dolphins, basically running backs. I think every running back on the Dolphins is on that team I was going to have to go up against, and they've been doing well. So
absolutely
should be good. But you touched on the Carson Wentz signing there to the Rams. So Sean McVay kind of does it again. He brings another seasoned vet in with Stafford kind of banged up here. So we'll see how that one comes to play. Now the question is, this one here, we don't get near the excitement that we got the last time where, Baker signed on a Tuesday or, like a Wednesday and started on, or played a whole lot on a Thursday type of thing. Carson comes in with a bye and everything else to try and digest and learn this offense a little bit.
Yeah. And if he does start, I think that it does keep Kupp and Puka Nacua extremely fantasy relevant, right? Like it was really bad against the Packers this past week, and their pass defense is pretty good, right? The Packers do a good job defending the pass. They're not so strong against the run in most cases. So it was a tougher matchup to begin with, but not having Matt Stafford definitely showed, you need someone who's able to sling it and fit it in tight windows for Cooper Kupp and Puka Nakua, because they are really good route runners. But you need to hit him, I guess, in cadence, because neither one are truly going to separate outside of their ability to just run a really good route. They're not speedsters. They're craftsmen, if you will. Very good, but nevertheless, there is a difference, right? They're not built like AJ Brown, where either one's a true X that can just body up everybody and go over the top and just built muscles upon muscles, and they're not Tyreek, who runs good routes but is just so blazing fast that it really doesn't matter who's guarding him. He just flies right by you like a blink of an eye, and then all of a sudden he's 30 yards down the field. So a little bit different, but I think Carson can do something with this. So it'll be interesting to see what the Rams decide to do, how Matt Stafford's thumb looks here after the bye week, if this was just an insurance policy because they really didn't like what was behind it, or if they think that there's more to Stafford's thumb and they don't want to push it, right? If they're trying to get one more year out of Stafford, all right, do you feel like going under the knife now? You can have a full recovery, get that ligament kind of repaired fully and healed up, or are we going to try and push here? So it'll be interesting to see what they do here in the next couple of weeks.
Absolutely. Anything else on the news notes you want to hit up, or should we answer Terrence's question?
Tyler's activated,
right?
So I guess that is something to be mindful for. I mean, it's tough to say start him, but you kind of got to start him if you have one of these quarterbacks on a bye, right? If that's the best option out there for you, then so be it. So really, it's probably a touch too early for true rankings, but I mean, Kyler's got to be QB 15 on the week.
If you're playing in a super flex, you'll take that.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. If you're playing a super flex, he's dang near a must start. Like when you get to the Aiden O'Connells and what the Giants are having to do now, and Zach Wilson not looking good. Again, Nathaniel Hackett strikes again. Like, he just can't dumb down an offense. Like, he cannot find what works for his quarterback that's not named Aaron Rodgers. So, some difficulties here this week for sure. So, there's a good chance a lot of people are going to play Kyler this first week and just kind of hope for the best.
I'll be one of them, right? In the home league, I've got Tua on bye. So in our super flex format, it's either roll out another skill position, which could certainly do that, or I roll the dice on Kyler and Deshaun Watson and see what we can do as my super flex combo there. But that may be what has to happen there, because Deshaun also has a tough matchup here. So
yeah, that Ravens matchup's going to be
yep.
That one's going to be a ball buster. I'm actually really excited to watch that game. Like, I think it should be a very good game between those two teams, with both defenses extremely hot right now. The Ravens are a little bit more dynamic offensively, but the Browns did a good job of not playing around with the Cardinals. And a lot of teams have gone into Arizona this year and kind of just played with them a little bit. The Ravens were one of them. Right, 2 weeks ago, the Ravens went in and kind of messed around. They didn't have their best game. It kept a lot closer than what a lot of people thought it should have. And ultimately Baltimore pulled it out, so the win's the win. But Cleveland left no doubt. Like, they came in, handled their business, and got out of town.
Right. It'll be interesting to see too, because the last couple of games that we thought the Ravens would have a tougher go of it. They kind of came out and left no questions on that one there, right? With the Lions, and then this last week with Seattle. Really no questions left on that one there. So they can certainly show up and play. And the question becomes is it one of those that they play up to do they play down to competition? That's some of those things that we'll still have to see how that comes to play later on here. But
and these divisional games, right? I mean, especially in the North, right?
Right.
Cleveland, Pittsburgh, and Baltimore are all right there. As bad as Pittsburgh has looked, and as choppy as Cleveland's quarterback situation has been, they're not out of it, right? Cleveland can absolutely push, right? And if they're able to get this game, they you know are right there neck and neck with Baltimore, and then it's a race to the finish. So they definitely have a lot to play for in this game. It's going to be like old slobber knocker, right? Like I mean, I haven't studied that game a whole lot just yet. But I can already tell you, I feel like it's the under all the way. Like I just don't see a lot of points here. I'm guessing this game's going to be like 38.5 without looking at the total anywhere. And I don't think we get to it. I think we're going to see something, 17-14, something crazy like that. Get just under.
Right. Yeah, that division's crazy. You got 3 teams at 5-3, and then the Ravens at 7-2. So it'll be interesting to see, right? Because if the Browns can knock the Ravens back, right, that puts them, within a half game of the Ravens, depending upon how the Steelers and Bengals both fare. Like you could have that, you could potentially have that thing where it is extremely close here heading down the stretch.
Absolutely.
So awesome. Well, should we get into, let's get into Terrence's question here.
Let's do it.
Terrence asking, should I start Najee or Jerome Ford?
Najee. Green Bay's run defense has not been very good. Najee looked good last week, right? Got him going early, got in the end zone, which absolutely helped. Deontay Johnson got in the end zone, which was good for him to get off that schneid. But the Steelers need Najee Harris to have any attempt of squeaking into the playoffs this year. They just do. The defense is not as good as it's been the last couple of years. The passing game is up and down with a lot of downs. And you need something consistent, and it's got to be Najee. Like it's not Warren, right? We've seen him. He's a flash. He's a nice change of pace back, but he is not the guy. He can't be the guy.
I concur. Let's go ahead and move to his next question here. Got to start 3. So pick 3 out of these 4. T. Higgins, Garrett Wilson, Amari Cooper, and George Pickens. Pickens the odd man out for me.
Cosign.
So, T. Higgins certainly started kind of flashing a little bit here. I don't see him necessarily having as good of a game as, where he's kind of expert consensus ranked out there. Yeah, there's a lot of folks out there that see him as a top 12 wide receiver this week. I think he's probably a very solid wide receiver too. Garrett Wilson, right? Same thing, right? He's probably a very solid wide receiver too for you. Same thing with Amari Cooper. George Pickens, he's a wide receiver 3, potentially 4 this week. So
I think the one thing with Higgins that could help him is if Jamar Chase's back does not loosen up, right? Did you see that? Did you happen to see that play against the Bills that's causing his back issue?
No, I ended up missing that one.
So Burrow was scrambling, tosses it down the field. It's about a 35 yard pass, and Jamar Chase goes up to get it, and the safety's kind of right there with him, bumps his hip a little bit as they're fighting for it. And Chase goes back and lands right on the small of his back. And it's just kind of one of those, he got crazy high on that and just landed right on his lower back. And whether you like Chris Collinsworth or don't like Chris Collinsworth is immaterial and irrelevant. But honestly, the truest thing I've ever heard him say was right after that play when he mentioned on air that I promise you that come tomorrow morning, Jamar Chase is going to have to crawl himself out of bed because nothing he can do can loosen that back up once he cools off tonight. And holy smokes, man, like truer words have never been spoken. They were trying to keep it warm on the sideline. They're trying to put a heating pad on it, a little massage chair there in his lower back, right, to help keep things loose. And it was definitely bugging him, but immediately Monday morning. Questionable, right? I think he walked in the door and they just checked the box right away and sent it to the NFL. Like they weren't even messing with it. So he's a professional. I'm sure he'll find a way to get loosened up and get playing. But if he's struggling at all, or if his back is bugging him at all, I do think that leads to Higgins seeing a larger role for this week than maybe what was initially going to be planned. Only because even if Chase is out there, he might only be,
Might be a week
75,
away.
80% for the week. And yes, that's still a really good Jamar Chase, but it's not a dominant Jamar Chase.
And actually, as you started describing that and talking about the Chris Collinsworth, that it did dawn on me that I do remember that. So yeah, I did see that one, and that one, yes.
Yeah. Oof, yeah. Watching it live, just ooh. So,
Yeah.
but yeah. Anyway, Terrence, Higgins, Wilson, Cooper. Don't be messing around with this Pickens deal until they figure out what's going on there, right? Deontay's gotten a lot of run the last couple weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Pickens, I'm not gonna say, kind of threw a hissy fit, right? I mean, and he's a Georgia boy. I don't want to bag on him, but took all the Steelers stuff off his social media and everything. Like, it was one game, dude. Like, it was one game. Relax, and you had yourself a touchdown, and you couldn't keep your feet in bounds. So you only have yourself to blame on that one because drag your toe.
And then Rockout over on the YouTube got a trade offer for Walker for Aaron Jones. Not sure about him. Like I get that there's a lot of run out there that people are talking about, that Zach Charbonnet has outsnapped him 2 games in a row, yada 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 yada, right?
I don't care about that Baltimore game. They were in a hole so stinking far that it's, I don't know. It's immaterial and irrelevant. Like they weren't going to play their guy.
Right. And I don't much run
go
into
ahead.
that, but I don't put much run into that. That Charbonnet is gonna, no, like Kenneth Walker's been a little bit banged up the last couple of weeks, right? The game was pretty out of hand, pretty quick, there for Baltimore. So made a lot of sense why they started the number 2 guy, right? And Charbonnet is a little bit better pass catcher out of the backfield. So game script, all of that kind of forced them down that road there. And the week before that, I believe it was a knee type of thing that Walker was dealing with, the injury designation all week, and ended up playing on that one. So no, I'm not going to move off of Walker for Aaron Jones on this one. Not going to happen.
Here's what I will tell you. Is on according to Fantasy Pros, right? If you're looking at rest of season, strength of schedule, the Seattle Seahawks have the 5th most difficult schedule against the run. So it is going to be tough sledding for Kenneth Walker here the rest of the way. Now, Aaron Jones and the Green Bay Packers, 10th most difficult. So, I mean, there's a little bit of a gap there. But does pure talent outweigh the difficulty? If Aaron Jones is catching some more passes, I think that helps. And he did look very good this past week. So I'm not sold on it. Like I feel like it's a little bit of horse trading, just to make a move. If you absolutely held it to my head, I would tell you that Aaron Jones is going to see more opportunities rest of year than Kenneth Walker will. And so if that is what you kind of want to bank it on, of more opportunities, higher chance of success, easier schedule, I think there's some things in Aaron Jones' favor that could, slide you over to that side. If you wanted to, but I don't know that it's a must trade by any stretch.
Yeah, I mean, both of these guys, when you start factoring the rest of season, all of that, probably rest of season, they're both RB2s when it's all said and done. Like that's kind of where I see these guys finishing out rest of season here, right? And
See,
yeah, they're both going to be roughly around probably 20, right? Like you put them somewhere in that 19, 20, 21 type of deal, right? Like shuffle the deck, all of that. That's probably about where I'm going to see these guys go through. So some of that depends on what you think is going to, how that's going to look and work and all of that. And while Seattle, I think, certainly has the tougher schedule there, their tougher schedule that they've also got, I think that they will be more competitive in those games than the tough run games that Green Bay has. Which that may actually prompt the Aaron Jones passing attack a little bit more so and help you out even more so there. But you summarized that very well with horse trading. You're swapping one guy for another, and at the end of the season, when you look up through this thing, these guys are probably going to be within 5 points of each other in like a half-point PPR scoring.
Yeah. So Pittsburgh, Chargers, Detroit, Kansas City, Giants, Tampa, Carolina, Minnesota.
Right.
And then Chicago's week 18. I'm not counting week 18 for Jones. And then Walker's
Walker
he's got a
has
hell of a tough stretch. Washington, Rams, San Francisco, Dallas, San Francisco, Philly, Tennessee, Pittsburgh, Arizona. That's a brutal stretch. Like, I think I might go ahead and do this, especially in a redraft. Like, that's a brutal stretch, right? Especially if you're fighting for playoff seeding or even to get into the playoffs. Walker might have more pure talent here at the moment, but golly, weeks 12 through 15 are absolutely brutal for Kenneth Walker. And it's hard to limp into the playoffs and get a first round playoff matchup against Philly, who's giving up the least amount of fantasy points to running backs per week right now as your first round matchup. Like, so if you're looking ahead, I think maybe you make this deal. Like, you sacrifice this week against Washington, where yes, he has the better matchup, knowing that San Francisco twice, Philly, and Dallas in a 4-week stretch. Like, Walker's damn near going to be unusable for a month. Like, you might as well put him on IR.
Yeah.
I think I do it. I think I just
even
talked
after he
myself
gets
into
out
this.
of, yeah, I think you just talked me into it too, because I'm looking at even after you get out of week 15, right? Like, if you manage to get through that first round of playoffs, you get Tennessee, who's been extremely good against the run too, for your semifinals type of thing.
Yeah. I
So
think I do this deal. I think I gamble on the fact that Aaron Jones is going to catch some passes, and if he, if he can stay healthy, and he looked really healthy last week against the Rams, but if he's able to kind of churn this, and this is how the Packers are going to play the rest of the season, Jones is going to see a lot of volume head his way.
yeah,
I think I do it.
yeah, you talked me into it as well. So, all righty. Well, should we go ahead and get into some Pine and Shine recap here from week 9? It did not look pretty for you. Not gonna lie.
No, I mean, it was one position that did it all.
Right. That's what I want right there. So the Pine, the Shine for week 9. Alex certainly had a pretty decent week there, coming out with the best Pine total on that one, right? Taysom Hill lost him a little bit of points there, but certainly hit on that Devontae Adams call pretty good. I had I had an okay week, right? Like, basically hit on 2 of them, and Devonta, was kind of treaded water and a little bit under type of thing there.
Yeah, Mostert and Allen were both hits, right? The game, that what an underwhelming football game Miami and Kansas City was. Like,
Right.
what a underwhelming game. But that Keenan Allen having a really tough matchup Monday night against the Jets, but Dalton Schultz smoked me, right? I did not see him going for 100 yards and a touchdown and finishing as tight end 1 on the week. Nevertheless, he did, and I got hammered because of it.
All righty, we'll head on into the Shine recap here. And for the Shine, Alex again had the best week here with Madison, coming on really strong there. Racy Rice finishing a little bit above projection, and then Hayden Hurst. They have a hard time saying that he hit on a call that a guy finished tight end 20, but for this instance, still got positive points out of it. So I hit on that one. I hit on both. I hit on two of mine and missed pretty good on the Rashid Shaheed. I was hoping that he was going to be able to sneak behind the defense and catch one of those long bombs that he's been, we're kind of going accustomed to seeing here a little bit. So lost a few points here on the shine.
Not as many as I lost with Ken Walker, and the Seahawks just not showing up in Baltimore. So, again, two out of three correct, and the one that I got wrong smoked me on both sides. So, Demario Douglas, not quite the performance I was hoping for necessarily, but nevertheless, outperformed projections. Finished as a solid wide receiver 3. So, if you need to flex him, he paid off. David Njoku back into tight end 1. Didn't fall in the end zone, which is a big reason why only the 10 points, but still above projections. But Ken Walker absolutely falling out of bed, and the Seahawks giving up on that game, basically a drive into the third quarter. That one hurt. That one smoked me.
Yeah, that one was a little rough. And Alex put together his best week of the season this last week and actually squeaked ahead of you into
Mhm.
second place here. Gained a few points back on me there as well, but yeah, we're kind of coming down to the stretch, and we'll see if I can't hold you guys off here heading down the stretch and see
Yeah,
if
we're halfway through, so
yep.
I gotta be better.
Sorry, we'll get it. And then Bryce over on YouTube, should I try to trade Mostert for Saquon, JT, or Brees Hall?
If you can get Brees Hall for Raheem Mostert, absolutely. So Brees Hall has the easiest remaining schedule for running backs.
Mm-hmm.
Easiest. And it's not that close. So he is absolutely a guy that if you are able to target, go ahead. So Jonathan Taylor's sitting 8th on the list. Jonathan Taylor's sitting 8th on the list. And then who's the other one, Derek? I'm not looking at it.
So it was Saquon, JT, or Brees. All three of
Yeah,
those guys, rest of the season, are going to be right next to each other on that one. Raheem Mostert is not going to be in that same kind of ballpark there. So if you can trade off of what you've done, do it. And if I can get any of those three for Mostert, I'd probably pull the trigger on it.
I don't know that I'd do it for Saquon.
I could
I
see
I
that.
think with Jones being out, like this Giants team's in shambles right now, and at some point they're gonna pull him back. Like, why risk him? Why? I mean, it's just my feeling about that. So I would lean Brees 1, JT 2, and Saquon a distant 3 is how I would attack those players if you're trying to trade for them.
Fair enough. All righty. Well, let's go ahead and get in here into some Thursday night football. We've got the Carolina Panthers facing off against the Chicago Bears. Chicago favored by 2. Over under on this one, 41.5. Thoughts on this one?
I'm gonna take Chicago here at home, short rest week. We'll see. It's still up in the air. Fields is going to play, but honestly, at 2 points, I'd rather take Chicago -2 than Fields come back at jump a -6 and ask Chicago to cover that. So that and they don't need to throw the ball, right? Carolina's terrible against the run. Terrible against the run. So Chicago's going to hand Devonta Foreman, Roshan Johnson, Khalil Herbert's eligible to come back. Has not been pulled off the IR yet, but he is eligible to return. So it should just be a big ground and pound game here for the Bears, and I think they're able to pull this one out at home. But I am going to take the under. I don't think there's going to be very many points scored in this game at all.
Fair enough. You want to hit up Alex's for me?
Yeah. Yep. Alex is going to be my polar opposite. He's taking Carolina and the over here on this Thursday night game. So, him and I are complete opposite edges, but he sees Carolina kind of finding a little bit of mojo here and some love for Bryce Young and Adam Thielen.
Yeah, I have a hard time believing that what we've seen out of both of these squads that Yeah, and especially Carolina lately. Like, I have a hard time believing that they're going to put up enough points to, allow this thing to get to 40 some points. Like,
I see
granted,
like 20-17.
yeah, that's kind of where I'm at there as well. And even then, I don't feel that great about the point total getting that high, right? Like, yeah, it was funny. I saw a stat that the the two players out there that have the most touchdown passes from Bryce Young this season, Adam Thielen with 3, and Kenny Moore, a defensive back for the Colts, has 2. Those are your top 2 touchdown scorers that Bryce Young has thrown the football to. So it's a little tough for me to be like, yeah, we're gonna see Carolina get this thing clicking and all of a sudden start putting points on the board. Like, it's kind of like, saying the Jets are gonna get to an over, right? Just they're not gonna put up enough points to get there. So I'm gonna take the under on this thing. I'm also gonna take Chicago. Call it maybe a little bit silly from the standpoint. The last time we saw the Bears out there on a Thursday night, they absolutely just rocked out, and we saw the Justin Fields that we were expecting to see when we drafted him, with early draft capital here this past season. But even if he doesn't come back, I think this is still going to be or even if he does come back, I think that the Bears get to 20 points and we see Carolina at 10. That's kind of where I'm seeing this. I do have Cole Kmet having a fairly decent game, going over 37.5 receiving yards.
Right on. Alex has Chuba Hubbard going over 40.5 rushing yards. And I'm taking the Bryce Young under 221.5 passing yards. As bad as Chicago is against the pass, I don't think they give up that many.
That's fair. That's fair. Alex, over on YouTube, who wins the trade, Adams and Amari Cooper for Bijan and Garrett Wilson? Even with the woes of the Falcons and the anyway, I forget the word I'm wanting to use there, but I'd rather have the Bijan and Garrett Wilson side, I think.
I think I would, knowing that these past couple weeks out of Bijan are probably his worst of the season. And I'm not convinced that they're going to realize that they can feature him and have him touch the ball 23 times a game. But I do think that Taylor Heineke will continue to make things a little bit easier for Bijan, and the box will be a little bit lighter. And I kind of like Garrett Wilson's rest of season schedule, for him a little bit to be a solid wide receiver too. Adams might provide the highest ceiling on any given week, but we've seen some floors that are absolutely atrocious. And Amari Cooper's just kind of a solid wide receiver too, right? I think he'll have some weeks where he might dabble in the back end of wide receiver 1, and he'll have some weeks where he's at the very bottom of wide receiver 2. But that's not Cleveland's offense, right? They want to run the ball. So I'm edging towards the Bijan and Garrett Wilson side.
Yeah, because Bijan's still got to be an RB1 rest of the season as far as how you rank him. Garrett Wilson easily wide receiver 2 in there, and with right now with what you're seeing out of the Raiders, Adams is borderline, wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2. So,
See,
yep. All righty, let's go ahead and get into the pine and the shine. Tell you what, why don't you take Alex's pines and I'll take his shines?
okay. For running back, Alex is pining Aaron Jones this week. Running back 13, projected at 12.6 points. Does not like his matchup against the Pittsburgh Steelers. I am saying pine Josh Jacobs this week. Running back 7, going up against the Jets, projected at 14.5. I don't think he's going to see enough passing work to get him over the hump here and get to that total. So I'm saying pine Josh Jacobs.
Fair enough. I had to pivot, and then I had to pivot again once I looked at the show doc, because Josh Jacobs was going to be my first pick on that one, and then I was like, Aaron Jones will be my next one, and sure enough, both you and Alex had taken those guys. So on my third selection, my pivot of my pivot guy here, I'm going to take Rachaad White. a little bit of a tougher matchup here. Tennessee has been pretty good against the run. So this is one of those that I think we'll see Rachaad White struggle just a little bit here and miss his projection of running back 17 and about 12.3 points projected on this one. Let's go ahead and head over to the wide receivers.
Wide receivers. Alex is saying Pine DJ Moore does not like his matchup against the Carolina Panthers, currently ranked at wide receiver 16 with a projected total of 11.1. And I am saying Pine Michael Pittman Jr. going up against the Patriots. They haven't done a whole lot well, but they do a good job of stopping your number one wide receiver. He's currently wide receiver 10 with a projected total of 11.6 points.
I like it. That was going to be my the guy I was looking at, and I was like, "That's who I'm going to do." And then I had to pivot again. I just got to get to the show doc a little earlier. Holy smokes, this week apparently. So I really like that Michael Pittman Jr. call. My pivot there is going to be T. Higgins. I think T. Higgins, right? We saw some flash this last game. Kind of the bounce back here. The Texans, though, have been extremely good against opposing wide receivers as far as allowing points to them. They're the 23rd hardest, or they allow the 23rd fewest points out there. So, points come at a premium for opposing wide receivers. Now, you did make a good point earlier in the show with, T. Higgins potentially having a better game than that, just from the fact that if Jamar Chase is a little bit banged up, not at 100% due to that back that we saw here on that Sunday game. So we'll have to look and see and see how that one rock and rolls here. So let's go ahead and T. Higgins is the wide receiver 11, projected to do about 11.6 points, and I think he'll come in just under that. Let's go ahead and hit up the tight ends.
And Alex is saying Pine Evan Ingram, tight end 7 with a projected total of 9 points. I was really thinking about this one as well. So I think this is a really strong play for Alex. I'm going back to the Kyle Pitts train. Pine him like 7.7 points, tight end 12. I hope I'm wrong for my fantasy teams, but at the same time, I'm willing to take the gamble here and say that even if he does go off, it ain't going to be much better than that.
Fair enough. I'm going to take Mark Andrews here right now. Mark Andrews has been really good all kind of season long, right? Kind of exactly what you drafted him to be, kind of that steady Eddie, just consistent tight end 1 performances here. However, coming into this week, he is ranked tight end number 2 on the season, or on the week here. They're up against that Browns matchup here. I think this is going to be an incredibly low scoring contest when it's all said and done. I think you see the defenses absolutely shine, and the Browns have given up incredibly few points to opposing tight ends. They are allowing the second fewest points to opposing tight ends there. Points certainly coming at a premium on the position there. So I think that Mark Andrews is going to miss his projection of tight end 2, 10.6 points there. All righty. Let's go ahead and hit up the old shine here. And these are guys that we think that we're going to outperform their projections. And we'll go ahead and start with Alex's running back here. Alex is calling for Najee Harris to have a really good game here. And I got to admit, I looked that way myself when I was looking at some of these. Najee coming off of a pretty good performance. Green Bay's run defense has been pretty bad. They give up about the 10th most points to opposing fantasy running backs here. So I think that Alex is probably a pretty good call here with Najee Harris being ranked running back 21, projecting to do about 10.8 points this week. And I think that he'll capture that and do well.
Right on. I am going with Ramondre Stevenson. Good week last week for Mr. Stevenson. I think we're in for another good week against the Colts. They're a little sloppy there on their run defense lately. If they get Zaire Franklin back, I think that'll help them. But I do think that this is going to be how the Patriots have to move the ball, right? Like, not that the Zeke experiment is over necessarily, but Stevenson is clearly the guy, and I think that there's some opportunity to be had there. So currently running back 17, projected total of 13 points, so a little bit higher on the point total, but I think that we're going to see a very good week out of Ramondre.
Yeah, I would agree with that one as well. I think he'll do very well. My shine, I'm sorry. My shine is going to be Tyler Algier. Going up against the Cardinals. Cardinals allow the fourth most points to opposing fantasy running backs. So I think we'll see him do very well. This is one of those two that we continually see, Bijan kind of not utilized in the way that the fantasy community would like to see him utilized. Tyler Algier certainly getting more snaps and certainly getting a ton of red zone opportunities here. So I think that there's a very good chance that we can see Tyler Algier outperform his running back 29 ranking and projected 9.1 points. Let's go ahead and hit up the wide receivers. And Alex is calling for the Marquise Hollywood Brown to have a good performance here in week 10 out of the wide receiver. Part of that is because the Kyler is back. Now, they're going up against the Falcons. The Falcons give up incredibly few points to the opposing wide receivers. They're a top 5 as far as fewest points allowed there. So a little bit of a tough sled there, but hopefully the reconnection with Kyler helps Alex get that one done.
Yep, absolutely. I'm going with Jackson Smith and Jigba. So he has been quietly putting up really good performances. He's kind of been the only Seahawk receiver to actually show up each of the last 3 games. And I think that this week will be a little bit better for them than the Seahawks in general, than how it went going out to Baltimore. So I like JSN. He's currently ranked wide receiver 38 with a projected total of 7.3. So I am expecting double-digit points out of our buddy.
Fair enough. The guy I'm going to go with is currently the wide receiver 30, projected to do 9.8 points. And that, of course, is Cortland Sutton. Broncos taking on the Bills here this week. And this is one of those that we've seen Cortland Sutton kind of come along here and kind of come on here, putting up several good performances before the Broncos headed into their bye. I think we'll see, some potential new wrinkles out of this offense, hopefully coming out of a bye, and the Broncos kind of playing really well and an energized team after beating the Chiefs for the first time in forever. So I think we see Cortland Sutton have a pretty good game here. Let's go ahead and head on into the tight end.
I'm gonna take us down a rabbit trail real quick.
Let's do it.
With how poorly the Bills have looked the past couple weeks, does this give you hope that the Broncos find a way to claw to 4-5 and can go in Monday night against the Bills and steal a game in Buffalo?
I'm potentially. It wouldn't surprise me if the Bills are kind of looking ahead there a little bit. One, they haven't looked great. The defense for the Bills has been pretty banged up, right? And they just kind of had that letdown game against the Bengals here. Although funny enough, Joe Burrows has yet to lose to Josh Allen. So I think that we could see that one there. But the Bills are also starting to play in that got to get right type of deal there. And the fact that they've got the Jets kind of right on that next matchup there. If this was week 11 and they had the Eagles the next week, I think they might get caught looking ahead there a little bit. But I think this is going to be a closer game than most folks are anticipating on this one. So I hope you're right. I hope that they can go in there and steal a win here.
I'm looking forward to it. We'll see how it shakes out. But if they use the bye week appropriately and have the extra day essentially with playing on Monday night, I think they have a puncher's chance. And I wouldn't have said that 2 or 3 weeks ago. But
No.
I think this win over Kansas City for the Broncos is going to do more internally, right, in the clubhouse than what a lot of people are talking about. Like, I think they finally have a win that can kind of galvanize this team and buy into what's going on even more so. And everyone still wants to think about the 70-point game. And yes, that it's on record, right? There's nothing the Broncos can ever do about that to take it off the record. But from week 3 to week 10, how different is every NFL team, right? There's no NFL team that looks the same in week 10 than what they did in week 3. So, I mean, we give everybody else grace. Maybe I should give the Broncos some grace being the hometown.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of those that the last 3 weeks, the Broncos have yet to allow more than 20 points in a game. So, and that was with 2 matchups against the Chiefs, and they played the Packers in there as well. So you have 2 matchups against the Chiefs who, everybody does, right? Like Andy Reid, all of that, like they haven't given up more than 20 points. So yes, they gave up 70 and it looked bad and all of that, but the last few weeks here, they are a very different football team. And this is one of those that, they could be that team that gets to start playing spoiler and see if they can't start catching some teams napping. And, one of those that they can peel off another 3 wins in a row type of thing. If they can peel off 2-3 wins out of the next 3 games, they could be in the hunt here for that kind of like last wild card here. So we could certainly see how that looks and works. But
Anything's better than the doormat.
that is very, very true. All right, let's go ahead real quick before we get into the tight end pines here. Actually, Terrence, I'm going to come back to your question. We're going to get this pine and shine knocked out here. Alex, for his shine on the tight end, he's going to call for Irv Smith, who's currently the tight end 22, projected to do about 5.5 points. Cincinnati going up against the Texans. The Texans give up the 10th most points to opposing fantasy tight ends here. And we'll see if we can, get another Irv Smith touchdown sighting in this game.
Fair enough. I'm saying Taysom Hill is going to shine. He's been on a hell of a run here the last 3 weeks. And really, this is because of his projected point total, right? They're still projecting his points in single digits. Currently, he's tight end 8 with a projected total of 5.9. He has easily eclipsed that each of the last 3 weeks. And I kind of cherry picked this one to try and gain some points after getting my sack lunch handed to me last week.
Fair enough. I'm gonna take the kind of the what would appear to be the long shot on this one, right? Cade Otton is gonna be my guy. Cade Otton currently the tight end 19, projected points to be about 5.6. Now, Cade Otton has the toughest matchup out there. Tennessee gives up the fewest points to opposing tight ends here, but this is also one of those that I think we could very well see one of these where, we see Tampa Bay kind of get down in there, get inside that, and just a quick flip into the end zone for Cade Otton. And that's really kind of where I'm going with here, is more of a, Cade Otton touchdown here in week 10 to carry him over that 5.6 points. So I think he'll do all right. All right, let's go ahead and get to Terrence's question in the chat here. So he's starting Stroud, Hall, Harris, Wilson, Higgins, Ferguson, Cooper, the Ravens defense, and Cameron Dicker this week. He's going up against Burrow, Eckler, Pollard, Waddle, Godwin, Kmet, Kamara, the Packers, and Koo. The opponent never changes his roster, has had the same lineup the entire season, even with Waddle on a bye.
It always helps when you don't have to go up against their, wide receiver 1.
Right. Now, Burrow rocks out like he's been the last couple of weeks. That could be a tough one there.
He's got a good running back room, right? Eckler,
Right.
Pollard, Kamara is nothing to
right. Like all of those
shake a
guys are
stick
going
at.
to put up big points this week.
Yeah. So now we think Najee's a shine. We like that. I like Breece Hall's matchup against the Raiders. I just didn't put him as a shine just because how we do the scoring. I was looking for something a little different, but I like I like Brees Hall. And Garrett Wilson has a good matchup too. We touched on Higgins. Alex. Derek's a little down on Higgins this week. I'm a little bit higher on Higgins this week. Ferguson has a really good solid matchup here. So I like that. And then Cooper's a little bit tougher going up against the Ravens. But someone's got to catch passes in Baltimore. And it's most likely going to be him or Njoku. So I tell you, you're sitting at 55-45, even with Waddle being out. It's going to be a tough matchup because those Eckler, Pollard, and Kamara all have plus matchups this week. So it's going to be a tough one, even with Waddle being on a bye.
Yeah, he certainly has the higher ceiling for sure. Now you could certainly sneak one out here, especially with Waddle not going there. But it will be a little bit tough. I don't really like the Packers, and some of this too depends on how crazy your defensive scoring is out there as well, right? Like if it's like most fantasy leagues, the defense is gets you just about as many points as your kicker does, but whereas like us in the home league, the defense can drastically sway a week. Just because they can score so many points. So, yeah, I think you've got a shot at that for sure. All
Now,
righty.
Terrence, remind me, you have Trevor Lawrence on your bench, right? Like if you're going to pivot off of Stroud, it would be for Lawrence. Am I remembering this correctly?
I think that is the case.
And you start the Ravens defense. Like they're playing so damn well right now. You play the Ravens. Cleveland's not completely inept offensively, but they do struggle offensively. So again, I think this game's going to be the under. I think it's going to be a low scoring kind of slugfest. So I think you start the Ravens defense with confidence.
And yes, he has Lawrence.
Against
going up against San Francisco.
But it's at home.
Right.
I think you're right to play Stroud, play the hot hand. Like
right.
If Stroud didn't have the week he had last week against Tampa Bay, I'd probably lean towards Lawrence just because San Francisco has not looked great and they have been beat up by Joe Burrow and they have been passed on a little bit more, but the bye week and them getting healthy and that extra week to prepare, I think you're good. I think you're good with Stroud.
Yeah, I would roll Stroud there as well. It wouldn't surprise me if we see Cincinnati and the Texans get into a little bit of a shootout type of
That'd
game.
be fun. Yeah,
right.
That'd be fun. I'd like to see that.
I could see that one be the total being around 50 points, right? Like I haven't looked it up, haven't done any of that, but just kind of off the cuff, I could see that one getting to that kind of point total. Whereas I think that Baltimore Cleveland, that point total might get to 35. So I'm gonna go that route there as well. Let's go ahead and hit up the next question here. T Money Reacts over on YouTube. Eight person PPR, 2 flex. They've got Burrow, Eckler, Mixon, Chase, Waddle, Kelsey, Puka, Debo. On the benches, Fields, Rice, JSN, Javonte Williams, Christian Watson, and the Lions defense. And the question is, should I trade Debo for Olave/DK or Devonta Smith or keep Debo? I'd move Debo for just about any one of those guys. But we know my opinions on Debo. I'm way down on Debo this year.
Yeah.
Olave's been tough, right? Like maybe I try and move him for Devonta Smith just because Devonta Smith is certainly in kind of the best offensive spot there.
It would be Smith or Olave. Like
right.
I don't want any part of DK. So if you're wanting to move off of Debo, and I don't blame you, I'm right there with Derek. I don't buy the Debo fantasy hype. And with the shoulder, like he just seems to get nicked up for as big as he is. Like he just seems to get nicked up a little too often. So Olave or Devonta Smith, I think Smith's ceiling's higher. Olave's floor week in and week out is probably slightly higher just because AJ Brown is demanding so much of Jalen Hurts' attention here at the moment, and rightfully so. He's been great. So, yeah, either Smith or Olave, whichever one you like the best. Now, let's see here. If I go to, I'd tell you that the Eagles have the third easiest schedule against the pass remaining this season. So I think Devonta Smith might be the answer in that regard. You just have easier matchups. New Orleans is kind of right in the middle of the pack. Top end of the bottom third of the pack, really. So I think Smith might be the call here. Have faith in Hurts. Yes, they're on a bye this week, but what you get the remaining weeks should be good for you.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Check it over on the YouTube is, should I trade Mike Evans and Hollywood Brown for Puka? I'm
No.
going to assume that Puma is Puka. I probably wouldn't. Just from the standpoint that you don't really know what you're getting out of the Rams, right? Like, if we knew that coming out of the bye, Matthew Stafford would be good to go rest of the season, it would be, I would tell you yes. But right now it's a little bit hard to do a 2-for-1 type of deal like that.
I would say no. Tampa Bay, 7th easiest schedule against the pass, and he's clearly Baker's number one guy, right? Like Chris Godwin does get his, but Evans is kind of the go-to guy. And I think you can kind of count on him down the stretch to help give your lineup the jolt it needs. Arizona's a little bit tougher with Marquise Brown, but again, Marquise and Kyler have a natural connection that has been going on for years with their time together in college. So, I don't think that there's anything wrong with that. And as Kyler continues to get his feet underneath him, I think that only means good things for Hollywood Brown, who was wide receiver 7 last year without DeAndre Hopkins, was wide receiver 7 until he injured his ankle right before Hopkins came back. So we've seen really good things between Kyler and Hollywood Brown. So I would play those two and keep them on there as opposed to Puka Nacua, who I think kind of regresses back to the mean of, wide receiver 2 with wide receiver 1 upside the rest of the season.
All right. So COD is COD Reaper saying 2 on bye with, I think he's got, I'm not sure who K is and Mostert. What should I do? Let us know who K is and then let us know what the options are.
Hold please. I think he or the technology. I'll get back to you, Derek. Sorry. If he answers before I do, then great. Go ahead and go to the next one. We'll touch back on it here in a second.
Okay. Jackson over on the YouTube was offered to trade away Alexander Madison and Hawkinson to acquire Ken Walker, Christian Watson, Demario Douglas, and Goddard PPR. The other tight end would be Njoku. Well, your only tight end would be Njoku. Goddard, memory serves right, fractured his arm this past week, and not sure what the timetable is for him to come back. So you're already kind of losing out on that tight end race there. I don't know that you see much of a difference in, strength of schedule, rest of season there between Ken Walker and Alexander Madison, with no longer having a Cam Akers, kind of trying to sneak some of those touches away, that kind of stuff. So yeah, I think you're kind of giving up the better players on kind of both sides there. Like that's a tough one to try and rock and roll that one. I'm just trying to see where I mean, Alexander Madison's going to be a back end RB2. And when we were talking through it, Ken Walker's kind of in that RB 20-ish range.
Yeah, I don't think I'd do this. Like, Addison actually has a really good rest of season schedule for running back. Hawkinson will be better with Dobbs, right? We saw what Zach Ertz and the last game Dobbs played in Arizona with Trey McBride. Like, he's not afraid to use his tight end. Watson, no thank you. And like you said, Goddard fractured his forearm. So no, I don't want any part of this.
Yeah. Check it saying that 12-person PPR Superflex: Hurts, Eckler, Hall, Jacobs, Higgins, Evans, McBride, Kyler, and on the bench is JJ, Hollywood Brown. What moves should I make? Was offered the Mike Evans and Hollywood for Puka. No, still wouldn't do the Puka deal on that one, but it's a 12-person.
I think you're in good shape. Like Eckler, Hall, and Jacobs, I think is just fine as a running back core. And then Higgins, Evans, Brown for now. And then Jefferson will be back here in a couple weeks, we hope. And I think that he will be. Derek and I were talking about this pre-show. I don't know that Justin Jefferson will be wide receiver 1 or 2 like he was before the injury with Kirk Cousins feeding in the ball, but I do think you can expect like a wide receiver 7 or 8 out of him. So think like Amon-Ra St. Brown and kind of that what that point scoring looks like. And I think that's where Jefferson fits in. Like Josh Dobbs is not going to ignore the best wide receiver on the planet, arguably, right? Tyreek Hill's right there, but Dobbs isn't going to ignore him once he gets back on the field. So I think you're sitting in pretty good shape, right? Like,
I mean, at worst case,
who's your other quarterback in a super flex? Like, you have Kyler. Who else do you have?
Right.
Like, that would be my question. Like, what do we need to do at quarterback here to make you better?
Yeah, because Hurts will be that, and then if Kyler kind of comes on there,
Hurts. Sorry, Hurts and Kyler.
Yeah. So you've got a top 3 quarterback there, and Kyler. Depending upon what that looks like. Now, part of the reason Kyler used to get so many of those points is, they get down inside the 5 and he just got to scamper in for a touchdown. I don't think we see that necessarily coming back here, but Kyler can get you back in QB1, I would think, when the season's all said and done.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're in really good shape here, especially if Justin Jefferson comes back, because even if you're not as bullish, wide receiver 7, 8, like worst case scenario, I can't imagine that Justin Jefferson slides into wide receiver 2 territory. So, you're talking back end wide receiver 1 and Hollywood Brown. If we see that similar connection like that, like your Justin Jefferson and Hollywood Brown could be your guys down the stretch here. Alrighty.
All right. So I finally
Which one are we
got
looking
to
at?
I finally got to COD Reaper. He sent us his roster.
Okay. And he's got it. Yeah, he's kind of got it here too, with Lawrence, Hubbard, Brian Robinson, Thielen, Higgins, Taysom Hill, Jake Elliott, and Deebo Samuel.
You're right? I think Chuba against Chicago. Alex likes the over on his prop, so that's a good thing. He dominated the touches and the timeshare in their matchup this past week. He's kind of the guy to have here at the moment. So as far as a bye week fill in, I think that is I think that's just fine, right? It's not Mostert, but at this point, you could do a lot worse to get through the week. So I like Hubbard here. I think you're playing your wide receivers right with Thielen, Higgins, um, Debo, right?
Would
Just
you
keep
go
an eye on it. If
Deontay
Debo,
over? Would you go Deontay over Debo though, just outright?
I'd go DK over Debo this week just because of the matchup. But the Packers are weird, man. They have done a good job against wide receivers, and I I would hate to go back into the, you know, Deontay this week. I think is like 5 for 65, like so. It's 11. It's 11.5 points, right? Is kind of how I see it now. His league has him scoring slightly higher than that, but I don't know that I do, especially after we just had Pickens kind of throwing a temper tantrum. Like I'm a little weary of Deontay this week. So if anything, I'd move off of Debo and go towards Metcalf, who's in a pretty plus matchup here against Washington.
Fair enough.
This should be a get right game for Seattle.
Right. Yeah, they've got to have that bounce back for sure. He's also saying that Keontae Mitchell, Lat Murray, Noah Brown, Dobbs, I believe that Jonnu Smith, Otten, and Henry are all on the waivers there.
Nah, I like the Taysom play, right? Safe floor, really high upside in a spot that tight end scoring is necessary, right? And you kind of have the nice little wild card who's on a really good 3-game run. So I think Taysom's the play there at tight end. Mitchell had a nice game in a blowout, but at best he turns this into a 3-headed running back room, and Gus still gets the goal line carries. Lat Murray, no thank you. I think we're going to see Fournette. We'll probably see Fournette Monday night against the Broncos. And then Noah Brown. Noah Brown's had a decent little 3-game run, but I don't know that I want to drop anybody on your roster to pick him up.
Right. I would agree with that. Dylan asked,
here's what I would tell you. I would pick up Dobbs and drop Howell. And I will get into that here at the end of the show when we're talking about things. But I would drop Sam Howell and pick up Josh Dobbs.
There we go. Dylan asking, drop Roshan or DeMarcado for Keaton Mitchell.
You could drop DeMarcado, right? Connor's coming back, even if it's not this week, it's next, and then it's kind of relegated. Keaton Mitchell, like we saw the flash, but again, it's a 3-headed running back room. But the Ravens are at least going to be relevant. Can't say the same for the Cardinals. So if you want to do that, I keep Roshan just to see how things kind of shake themselves out with all 3 running backs healthy in Chicago. DeMarcado, like he was a volume guy, right? He's not explosive. He doesn't have a ton of wiggle, but if you get him the ball 18 times a game, he'll get you 87 yards.
Right. Also, Lamar or Stroud rest the season. Stroud gets
Lamar.
to see twice.
Don't overthink this. Don't overthink this. It's Lamar. Stroud's nice to have, right? It's a nice pivot. It's a nice asset. He's still a rookie, and if it gets into crunch time, we haven't seen him in the NFL, right? In these late season games when they're trying to make a playoff push. Lamar's the guy rest of season.
Right. I say, Lamar's been inconsistent scoring wise. Some of that is because he hasn't had to do much.
Yeah, they're
right, like
blowing teams out. Here, so go back to my little spreadsheet here.
Rest of the season, I've got it where it is Lamar.
Right in the middle of the pack.
Right, like I've got Lamar probably quarterback 5-6 type of thing there. CJ Stroud, quarterback 10 kind of rest of the season. So it's probably closer. It's certainly closer than I ever thought we would be here at this point in the season. But it's still Lamar. And especially down the stretch here, you would think that we'll see games that tighten up and get closer. That makes it where we will see Baltimore throw the ball a little bit more. We'll see Lamar have to make plays a little bit more often to get that thing done. So, any other thoughts on that one?
No. Chargers, Rams, Jacksonville. Yeah. No, it is Lamar. And you can choose to keep Stroud, right, and carry two quarterbacks in case Lamar does get banged up, which isn't a bad idea, right? Now you have a very solid pivot. Or if there's a gap in your roster, you look to flip Stroud and see what you can get, because this right now is the peak of his value that you will see this season. Coming off the game last week, 470 yards, the 5 touchdowns. This is the peak of CJ Stroud's value for this season. So if you're able to flip him for an asset that you need to help fill in on your roster, running back, wide receiver, tight end, whatever that looks like, I'd look to flip him if you can't keep him.
Absolutely. Terrence asking, is Lenny worth a stash? Rostering Hall, Achan, Kyron Williams, Najee Harris, Jerome Ford.
Not with that running back room, he's not.
No, that's your RB6 that you'd be adding there. Alrighty, Dylan. Or Terrence says also saying thought about adding Rondell Moore. Yeah.
Like, Moore doesn't do it for me. I'd rather look at like Shakir from Buffalo, who's had some run here the last couple weeks. Jalen Tolbert from the Cowboys, who had a really good game against the Eagles, right? And see if maybe you get some more splash out of that. See, teams with a little bit more oomph. Rondell Moore, even when Kyler's been healthy, we have not seen Rondell Moore be a real factor other than, very sporadically at best. So I'm not looking to do that.
Noah Brown would be another name that I'd throw in there.
Yeah, Noah Brown. Yep.
Like a couple of solid weeks here. We could potentially see him just anyway. I would rather have Noah Brown over Rondell Moore. Dylan asking, who are some good buy low, sell highs? Maybe buy Bijan or Pacheco. Both very nice playoff schedules.
Stay tuned. We got you covered.
Dylan is saying that the 12-team PPR that lost Anthony Richardson, got Stroud, Pollard, James Cook, Joe Mixon, Herbert, Spears, Hunt, Diggs, Ayuk, Hollywood, Michael Thomas, Downs, Andrews. Feel like there's so much depth there.
Yeah, you got some really good depth there, right? Pollard's coming up into a softer part of the Cowboys schedule. So if you've held on to him this long, you might as well ride him out unless you get a really good offer. Derek can attest to that in the home league. James Cook, a little bit of up and down. I feel that in a lot of leagues. I have a lot of James Cook around me. There's some weeks where I'm pretty happy with it, and there's other weeks where I get really frustrated with the play calling in Buffalo, like they just completely forget about him and kind of give up on the run game, let Josh Allen chuck it around the yard. Mixon has been on a little bit of a heater here lately. I like that. Herbert's coming off IR. Like, I like the depth of this roster. Diggs definitely helps. Clear number one anchor. So I like this roster. It's a good roster.
Yeah. And so he's saying that based on that 12 team above, what would you add to get Lamar?
Oh, so you're looking to trade for him?
Or are you even doing it?
I'm not trading for him. I think you stay pat and you don't give up your depth. Like, there's still some season left that you still want pieces around you to navigate injuries that don't just derail your season. So I think you just run with Stroud, call it good. If anything, I'm looking to drop Michael Thomas and acquire another quarterback off the waiver wire and see if there's something else out there, and do it that way. But I'm not. Yeah, I drop Michael Thomas. Hell, I might even drop Spears. With the running back room you have, either one of those guys to pick up a secondary tight end possibly and secondary quarterback, like just to balance it out in case of injuries. Like, now you can be really picky of who has the good playoff schedules. So, and again, we will cover a lot of that here in the next segment, once we get through these questions, we are going to be covering players to be targeting for a deep playoff run.
And actually, if you're looking to try and add, you're trying to make a trade for a quarterback to add somebody that's got the decent playoff schedule, all of that, you could look at a Justin Fields type, right? He's going to have 2 really tough games with Carolina and then Detroit right away. So, right, you've already got that. He comes back, doesn't look very good against Carolina, which would be my guess if he plays Thursday night, right? He may not look great. And then Detroit right after that one. So you could get even lower of a buy low if you've got like a week 11, week 12, or week 13, week 14 type of trade deadline in your league. Like that could be something you could flip that at the very end. And see if you could pull something out on that and get that really cheap there. But
Yeah.
So he's also asked an or for Pacheco or Bijan.
I got him covered.
Right. So Justin, hang on, because we're gonna get to we got a whole thing here at the end of the show where we're gonna be talking.
Not Justin.
My apologies, Dylan. Hang on until we get to the end. We'll rock and roll through that.
Reaper, yeah, go ahead and pick up Matt Gay if you need a kicker. I mean, he's been very solid. So go ahead and pick up Matt Gay. It's so hard to tell when these kickers are going to go off and kick 4 field goals in a game and when they're not, right? Like they're not a dime a dozen, but they are a dime a dozen. Honestly, if I could get rid of kickers and defenses in most fantasy leagues, I would.
Absolutely. COD's asking, there's matchups against Jackson, Aaron Jones, Rashad White, Michael Pittman, Jamar Chase, Laporta, Madison. The bench is Swift, Devontae Adams, Nico Collins, Tyler Lockett, Trey McBride.
You got a good week to get this guy, right? Lamar's gonna have a tough matchup against the Browns. Derek has Rashad White as a pine this week. I have Michael Pittman as a pine this week. Jamar Chase is going to be nursing a back. We'll see how that shakes out. Laporta coming off a bye week, I think is going to be a good thing for Detroit there. And Madison, we'll kind of see how some of that shakes out. But no, I think you got a good week to get this guy. I like your chances.
Right. All righty. And Dylan saying that he'll stay tuned for the buy lows. And you know what, Dylan? We're out.
Coming right up.
Oh, yeah, because you know what? We are out of the questions here. So let's go ahead and get on into it. And really what we're looking for here, right? Like you can certainly look at this as some of a buy low type of segment. We're looking more so at guys that have really, really good fantasy playoff runs, strength of schedule, rest of season, all of that kind of stuff here. And so we're looking at that, and you know what? If a name we throw out here, rings a bell, whatever, throw it in the chat. Throw what you've got on your roster. We could potentially try and work with you and see what we can do on helping you. Potentially put together a trade package to go try and get one of these guys here. But how do you want to split this one up? You're on mute. That's one.
Trying to drink my water and not be rude, and then you can't hear me talk and blah, blah, blah. All right. So as we were kind of building this part of the show, right, and I was kind of looking through this and helping build this out for the segment, as I specifically stayed away from tier 1 guys, right? These are assets to acquire who are not going to have to triple your depth to be able to acquire these players, right? So yes, obviously we all want Josh Allen, right? We all want, Brees Hall. We all want Christian McCaffrey, but they're not always viable trade targets. So I came up with 4 guys, right? 4 guys in each position that are tier 2, tier 3 type players that have really good matchups for the playoffs or for the rest of the season even. To be able to add some depth and help bolster possible areas of weakness for your teams. So a little context behind how we came up with this list.
I like it. How do you want to split it up? You want to go take a position group, just rotate through it each player?
Yeah, sure.
All right. I'll start it off with, you know what, you started off. You found that dime in the rough, and you've been teasing it all night here with that quarterback here. It's your number one. Go ahead and start us
Fair
off
enough.
here.
Josh Dobbs is the number one quarterback that I would be targeting for rest of season in a cheap trade, right? And something that you can get. He's probably someone's number two quarterback. If you're wishy-washy, right? If you've had kind of the Sam Howell experience and that's been good for you, his matchup down the stretch is brutal. It's really, really tough for Washington. So a pivot, right, would be Josh Dobbs, who rest of season has the easiest matchup for quarterbacks, or the easiest rest of season strength of schedule for quarterbacks. So Josh Dobbs is an absolute target if you are looking for quarterback depth, or a being able to finagle around in pieces of a trade. If you can acquire him in that and it makes the other guy still feel like it's a slough off, you will be miles ahead.
I like that one a lot. That has got a really a lot of really good things going on with that one too, right? Like you can absolutely kind of go get that guy on the cheap, and in a lot of formats he's probably on the waiver wire out there this week, right? Like a lot of folks kind of probably dropped him on the trade news to Minnesota, where he was not going to be the starter going into that thing. And so I think he absolutely kind of earned himself that starting role there rest of the season there. Second guy on the list, Jared Goff. And Jared Goff has got a really good schedule kind of throughout, right? Like a much better schedule kind of weeks 1 or 10 through 14. Then when you get into some of the meat of his playoff schedule, but even the playoff schedule, still a pretty good playoff schedule here, right? Like coming off the bye, they get the Chargers, the Bears, the Packers have been a little tough. New Orleans has given up some passing the Bears to finish off the regular season there. So lots of really good matchups throughout that one. And then into the playoffs, you're getting into Minnesota, Denver, Minnesota, Dallas, and really kind of that week 17 is the only one that you're really looking at that going, that could be a bit of a really tough matchup for a championship type of week there. But even so, like we've seen it where you can pass the ball a little bit on Dallas over the last few weeks, and so certainly opportunity for that one, and a guy that Jared Goff has been serviceable, much better as far as home road splits, and that's kind of the only thing that I would be a little concerned about was week 16, week 17, semifinals, championship. You're talking on the road. Jared Goff home road splits have been a little tough there, but up until week 16, you really do have a lot of really, really good matchups and smash start type of matchups for
Absolutely. So next on this list for quarterbacks, I have Dak Prescott. Um, Again, his price has gone up here over the last couple weeks for sure. But if you were looking to acquire a quarterback with some favorable matchups, and coming into the playoffs, who you feel like is going to give your team a bit of a boost, Dak Prescott is a guy to be targeting, right? If you're tired of messing around with Trevor Lawrence, if you're tired of um, uh, kind of, I guess, playing the Baker Mayfield Geno train, right? Like you're gonna have to give up a little bit more to get Dak as opposed to Jared Goff or Josh Dobbs on this list. He's definitely the highest profile name, but he has a good remaining schedule and the ability to really put points up on the board quickly.
Yeah, we've certainly seen that one come to play for sure. Last guy that we've got here, number 4 guy on the list, Russell Wilson, who has played really well kind of throughout here. Um, numbers have been very comparable to that of a Patrick Mahomes in a lot of weeks here, and kind of season long aggregate type of thing there. Really good schedule kind of going down the stretch, and has probably one of the best schedules when you start looking at weeks 14 through 17. Um, a lot of really kind of plus matchups there as well. But throughout it, this is a guy that doesn't demand the trade type of volume that we've seen in years past on what like a Russell Wilson would garner on that one. And you're going to see a lot of kind of really good things coming from Russ and the Broncos, I think, down the stretch here.
Absolutely. Moving on to running backs, if you will. First one I have on this list, Isaiah Pacheco, right? Isaiah Pacheco is absolutely a running back that I would be looking to target if you're trying to bolster your running back room. His cachet is that he's attached to this Chiefs offense, but he's been a very serviceable part of this Chiefs offense, right? We've seen him catch some more balls out of the backfield here lately, which helps. But he has been a kind of a consistent here as they struggle to find wide receiver consistency. Pacheco and Travis Kelce, for the most part, have been the consistents here for this offense. So he's absolutely a target for wide receiver performance down the stretch, or excuse me, running back performance down the stretch.
Yeah, he's been doing some really good things there. Rachaad White, next guy on the list here, right? Kind of that number 2 spot. I really like that you got his name on here because Rachaad White is going to have a couple of tough matchups this week and next week. But after that, it clears up pretty good here coming down the stretch, and you're going to be incredibly happy once you start kind of getting in there, right? Like you get Tennessee this week, which they've been tough against the run. San Francisco, which has been tough against the run, but then you get Indy, Carolina, Atlanta has been a little bit tougher, but then Green Bay. Like you get into some really plus matchups and some really, really good matchups here. Not only that, we've been seeing Rachaad White used far more in the passing game lately than what we saw earlier in the season, right? Like we've started seeing a lot of almost 50 yards a game type of thing those last 3 weeks here as far as his receiving work. So even when he goes up against some of these tougher matchups when it comes to running the ball, he's been getting enough passing work to bolster that and carry that thing through. So, even against these tough matchups, the floor is certainly solid for what could be a very good RB2 or flex play option for you, especially something that you could go and trade for with not a ton of capital on that.
Yep, absolutely. Next on that list, we kind of alluded to it earlier, Ramondre Stevenson. I think we struggled through the first half of the fantasy season with Stevenson, but I do think his time is coming here with the New England offense, right? They are depleted at the wide receiver core. Hunter Henry's been hit or miss after a really hot start at tight end. Mac Jones has been benched twice now and then brought back to play. So he is really kind of the consistent of this Patriots team. He's starting to catch a couple more balls out of the backfield than what he was earlier on in the season. So that helps boost his floor up a little bit. And we saw it with a really good performance last week. You can get him 17 touches a game. He can get you 80 plus yards and a very good chance for a touchdown, which is really good when you're looking at a running back 2 or possible flex play to bolster your lineup.
Absolutely. Another guy on the list is one that folks are certainly very down on, especially when you kind of saw through his first 5 weeks of the season where really didn't look very good. The fantasy outcomes performances weren't very good with only one top 24 running back finish in any of those weeks. However, they went on bye in week 6, and Najee Harris coming out of the bye has given you two pretty good performances out of the 3 weeks here. Week 7 up against the Rams, and the Rams had been pretty good against the run up until that point. Gave you a top 12 finish, and then gave you a back end, a borderline RB2 finish there in week 8 against Jacksonville, and then put up a RB1 against Tennessee, who's again been pretty good against the run. So this is one of those that Najee Harris is a guy that a lot of folks are down on, and if you hadn't been paying attention, he's on a lot of rosters that struggled based on where you still had to take him draft capital wise, things like that, and then a lot of those roster constructs there. So a guy that you can probably get for a couple of depth pieces off of your roster, and a guy that gives you really good flex play, considering strength of schedule the rest of the season, potentially even RB2 play rest of season here as well.
There you go. You want to kick us off on wide receivers? We'll switch it up.
All righty, let's go ahead and hit up into the wide receivers here. And I really like the name that you got here at number 1 here on the wide receivers. That is Drake London. Definitely a different Falcons offense than what we're used to seeing here. Once Taylor Heineke got under center, Drake London with the Desmond Ridder experience was not very good, to say the least. And this is a guy that, again, has been very kind of up and down all season, has really only given you kind of 2-3 weeks for usable fantasy production. Missed this, and with the Taylor Heineke coming in here, we're going to see a much better outcome, much better targeting to this thing. Like, this is one of those that it would not surprise me to see Drake London get anywhere between 8 and 10 targets a game going forward. And with a very good strength of schedule down the stretch, this is a guy that you can go out and acquire kind of on the cheap there. This is not something that you can give up for a couple of depth pieces or even one depth piece type of thing. Like, Drake London managers are pretty out on him.
Absolutely. Number 2 on this list, and really I should have put both on here. It's DK Metcalf or Tyler Lockett, right? Like, kind of tomato. They're right against each other here for rankings. But the road for pass catchers does get easier here for Seattle going down the stretch. So again, DK extremely underwhelming here for the season year to date. Tyler Lockett's been kind of the same. So feel free to kind of take a stab at either one. It'd be nice flex plays here to bolster your lineup going down the stretch. And with them kind of underperforming, these would be good buy low candidates.
Absolutely. Really like the next name that you have on the list here as well, with Brandon Ayuk being in there. So a lot of folks, right? Like, we always get the question, like, should I go get Debo? Should I go get Debo? Right? Like, what's it going to take for me to get Debo in the when we're talking on trades and all of that kind of stuff? Because that's the wide receiver that the fantasy community still seems to want to go out and get for fantasy purposes rest of season. We told you all the way back in June, July that Brandon Ayuk was going to be the wide receiver that you wanted off of this Niners team, and it's certainly coming to fruition even before the Debo injury. And I'm firmly in the camp that Brandon Ayuk is a top 10 wide receiver rest of season in a half point PPR format type of thing, even with Debo back, all that kind of stuff. I think the buy certainly helps out the Niners here, kind of get right to, and they kind of been floundering going through that, but incredibly good schedule coming down the stretch, especially for passing. And Debo's are, Brandon Ayuk is going to be a guy that you're going to wish that you had acquired going down the stretch and into your playoff run.
Absolutely. And then last on the wide receiver list for this exercise, Mike Evans. Quietly having another really good season. Baker is not afraid to target him deep. We've seen him getting into the end zone, even on down weeks where he doesn't quite have the reception total. And don't forget, Mike Evans has never had a season under 1,000 yards. So if he's anywhere close to this in the last 2-3 weeks of the season, semifinals, finals, they are going to hyper target him to get him these marks, much like with what Philly just did with AJ Brown to get him that record. This is a big pride thing. Like, everybody understands where he's at with this, and they would love nothing more than to continue this streak, probably before he leaves Tampa Bay in the offseason. But nevertheless, they want to be able to keep that intact, and Baker will help him do that. So I think Mike Evans is a really good wide receiver 2/flex play candidate for you down the stretch.
I like it. Let's go ahead and hit up into the tight ends. And first up on the list, we've got Jake Ferguson. Jake Ferguson, Dallas has a really good schedule down the stretch here. And we've seen Dallas certainly throwing the ball much more than what we had seen, to start the season off here. And Jake Ferguson has been the recipient of many of those, really kind of putting up just really good, solid tight end performances here. And one that I could see him being a top 10 tight end as far as rest of season goes here.
Yep, absolutely. Number 2 on the list, Trey McBride. Kyler coming back, I think does really good things for Trey. Kyler has always been pretty tight end favorable, right? Zach Ertz had a good run there with Kyler. And even before Zach Ertz arrived in Arizona, they did use the tight end. They just had multiple tight ends that they were using. But there was reason they brought Trey McBride in to be a pass catcher. I think he pairs very well off of Hollywood Brown, and that will help him down the stretch here. And having Kyler at quarterback only makes it better.
Absolutely. And looking at our last guy that's our third guy we have on the list here, Tyler Conklin is a guy that has been a pretty usable streaming tight end for you. And down the stretch, schedule certainly lines up for you. Really good schedule here down the stretch. This is one of those that, and it's kind of a win-win on this one, right? Like Zach Wilson has had to utilize Tyler Conklin a fair bit, with a lot of the pressure, that kind of stuff. So he's getting targeted that way. He's even getting red zone looks when they get into the red zone. On that one. But there's also talk that, we could see Aaron Rodgers back before end of season on this one as well. And if that one comes to fruition too, like this is one of those that we've seen Aaron Rodgers utilize the tight end a bunch in the past here. And, one of those that if Aaron Rodgers may be getting the ball out even quicker if he comes back than what we've seen in the past. So this very well could be one of those that you see a Tyler Conklin just kind of explosion down the back end here. Under Rodgers if he comes back, and if not, you've still got a very serviceable, usable tight end rest of the season here for you.
Absolutely. And then last but certainly not least, number 4 on this tight end list, Luke Musgrave from the Packers. Luke Musgrave has quietly put together a very good rookie campaign. The touchdowns haven't quite been there, but his usage is very good. He's being used in the passing game. He's not just standing in and blocking the whole time, which is a good thing because the Packers need to find ways to move the ball offensively. And the good news with Luke Musgrave is the better Aaron Jones goes, the better Luke Musgrave goes. So if you can get some of that focus from the safety dropping down and in on Aaron Jones, leads to big things in the play action passing game where he's able to kind of fake that block, hold it for a second, and then roll out into the flat and help Jordan Love out. So Luke Musgrave is a guy that if I've been streaming tight ends, stash him and then you'd be able to kind of ride that out here in the good matchups the rest of the way.
I like it. COD Reaper saying that he's back in the top 5, ranked 3rd. Let's get to the playoffs. Absolutely. He's sitting at 5-4. Not a bad spot to be sitting in 3rd in your league and see if you can't make that push, get up there in that top 2. George over on YouTube. Should I drop Goddard for K. Otten or Njoku? I would roll with the Njoku train on that one. Maybe not this week, but
I kind of want to see, and the problem is this is where George is going to get pinched, right? Because they're not going to have to put him on the IR this week because they don't play a game with it being the bye, right? So they're not going to have to do anything about it then. You're not going to get an updated injury report to designate him out and be able to put him in an IR spot. If he did fracture his forearm, you would think that he's going to be down at least a couple weeks before he tries to play with a cast, possibly. Man,
well, there's a good chance that, right, if it takes 4 to 6 weeks to heal, like most bones do, right? Like, and I would imagine it's going to be kind of that elbow cast. Pure speculation on my part here, but that'd be a ton of tough to play in a cast. But
yeah.
so it's one of those that I would imagine Goddard is probably, the Eagles aren't going to rush him back if they, don't absolutely need to and look at him for a playoff run. Is where I think that they're really probably going to look for that at.
Yeah, and I'd rather have Njoku as a consistent piece over K. Otten. K. Otten did just have a very good game against the Texans, but it's been kind of hit or miss for him. So I think I'd rather go Njoku.
Right. George saying, should I trade Ken Walker for Bijan?
Yes.
Yeah.
Their floor's been about the same.
Yep.
And Bijan's just otherworldly talent. Like eventually you have to believe Arthur Smith's going to figure this out.
You would hope so. Not only that, the Falcons have a pretty good kind of rest of season schedule and a really good playoff run type of schedule there for Bijan there as well. So
Mhm.
yeah, everything points towards the Bijan side of that. Dylan saying agree, and this was back when you were talking about the DK Tyler Lockett. Could you argue Jackson Smith too? I think
You could
well,
argue that, but they're just different tiers,
right.
right? Like, and I think that's just what you're understanding. Smith should be cheaper, right? Like he is just purely a flex play. I think with DK or Tyler Lockett, you at least have the ability to kind of count on them as a wide receiver 2 in a lot of these matchups coming out. Smith has wide receiver 2, even wide receiver 1 upside, as we saw a couple weeks ago. Um, but I think universally, he's kind of sitting into that wide receiver 3 to flex play.
I like it. Dylan is asking the guy is 3-6 with Pacheco and JSN. What would you offer off my team? Thinking James Cook, MT, and a third piece if I need to add. The roster he's got is Stroud, Pollard, Cook, Mixon, Herbert, Spears, Hunt, Diggs, Ayuk, Hollywood, MT, Downs, Andrews.
I'd throw Downs in there.
Yeah.
Downs and JSN are going to be about equal in a lot of ways. So you kind of have that piece
Needs a running back.
as
And he
far as
says the guy needs a running back to play, and he's got, Cook has Denver this week.
I don't hate it. If you could get out from James Cook and get Pacheco, I think you just kind of do that. So, I mean, and maybe it's just that like Cook and Thomas for Pacheco, right? Like, I don't know that you need Downs and JSN both on your roster, especially with Diggs, Ayuk, and Hollywood. Like, he's just not going to see. They're not going to see your starting lineup unless things go to hell in a handbasket, and then you're going to have bigger problems, honestly. So, I mean, I'd see if he'll do it for Cook and Michael Thomas and see what he comes back with. Just for Pacheco, straight up.
All righty. Well, that's all the questions that we've got in there. Any final thoughts out there?
No, good show, guys. Yeah, we appreciate all the comments and questions and just so thankful that you guys decide to spend a Tuesday night here with us talking fantasy football. It's something that we really enjoy doing and we're glad that you guys are able to take part in that. So continue to hit us up at Good Old Boys FF wherever you consume your content, right? Across social media platforms, obviously the YouTube channel. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe. And good luck here in week number 10.
I like it. Oh, let's see here real quick. Off of your buy lows, are y'all thinking I need to make any moves? Dylan says he loved the take on that one.
That you need to? No, I like that idea, Pacheco, though. Like, I do like that idea, especially if you can get off of James Cook and kind of take the boom bust out of that and take Pacheco, who has a really good rest of season schedule. I like that idea, but I think that's kind of about it. Like, I like where you're sitting with wide receiver. I think that you have some pop in that room. So that might be kind of the one thing just to help bolster your running backs. If Pollard doesn't snap out of this funk, Pacheco will be able to kind of ease that pain with him and Mixon.
Right. And the only other thing that I would look at is, get some insurance policies at quarterback and tight end there. Right. Like that would probably be the only other thing I'd look at because you only got one on the roster, Stroud and Andrews. Now, it would be pure insurance policy, and you're looking for somebody just to put on the roster that if you had an issue there, you could put in a pinch type of thing without having to scour whoever's available on the waiver wire to get that done. Right. And so,
Yeah, Musgrave has been on and off the waiver wire all year long, right? So
right.
he may or may not be
Conklin is
out there.
consistently on the waiver wire.
Conklin's out there. So either one of those guys, I think, would be a good ad that you could drop. You could drop Spears for that. And if you're able to do that 2-for-1 for Pacheco, then you're going to have that open roster spot for another quarterback. And I don't anticipate any of the guys that we spoke about necessarily are going to be on that list.
Dobbs might be
But
on the waiver.
Dobbs possibly. But I think that there's some options out there because it's an insurance policy at that point. It's just in case something happens to Stroud.
Yeah, he says he doesn't have any roster spots available at the moment, but both Dobbs and Musgrave are open.
So yeah, I mean, try and make that trade. I think first things first, I would drop Spears and pick up Dobbs, right? So when you're for your waiver wire claim this week, I would drop Tajay Spears, pick up Josh Dobbs, and make that your priority. And then you can pick up Musgrave or Conklin, whatever that looks like, if you're able to get that 2-for-1 deal for Pacheco, is how I would prioritize that for you, Dylan.
Same. Says, yeah, I need to make the trade. Absolutely. Yep. Get the trade done on that one. And then Kevin just walked you through how he'd rock and roll that one.
Best of luck.
Yeah, absolutely. COD Reaper saying, thank y'all. Have a blessed night. And and Stroud, ride that all the way. No Lamar. Yeah, I wouldn't trade for Lamar, right? Like, ride Stroud, do the Dobbs.
Yeah, the price on Lamar, they're going to be asking too much for it.
Right. You've got name value and everything else. Like, it's one of those that even though, it's been inconsistent, things like that, like, yeah, you've got the name value to also deal with there as well, right? Like somebody, just because on paper it makes sense and you're giving up players that may, do that, right? Like same thing too, right? Like go offer, depending upon your league, go offer Puka Nacua for Amon-Ra St. Brown. And tell me what happens on that trade deal. It's an instant no, even though Puka in most formats has outpointed Amon-Ra by a good stretch there, right? Like it's just, there is something to do with some of the name value and the perceived nature of that as well. That, you got a guy that has name value, had draft capital associated with it, all of that. Like there's a lot of that if somebody's not really diving into and looking at some of that, they just don't see it and it's an instant no. So, alrighty. Well, so I know we already asked final thoughts, but anything else that popped up while we were going through those?
No, good luck, guys. Good luck. Have a good week.
Alrighty. That's going to do it for us. He's Kevin. I'm Derek. We'll be live again on Friday night, 11 p.m. Eastern, where we go through the entire Week 10 game of slates, talking all the games, answering all your fantasy questions. And we will look forward to seeing y'all then. And then we should have Alex back here again on the Tuesday show here. And, rock and roll on that one there as well. So, oh, you would sneak that one in right at me, right on the end of that one. All right. Also have Levis on the bench. Drop Levis for Dobbs.
Yes.
Boom. Yeah, that's it. At that point, I would tell you, don't mess around on this one. You could drop Levis for Dobbs. You could drop Spears for Musgrave, and you still try and go out and get the deal done for Pacheco. And then you've got your roster really kind of bolstered up at that point, Dylan, looking good heading in towards the fantasy things. They saying that he appreciates everything. You're most welcome. All right. That's going to do it for us. He's Kevin. I'm Derek. Alex will be back next week. We'll see y'all on the Friday show. Have a good one. Be safe. Toodaloos.